The Nashville summer heat clung to my skin as I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the emerald dress I had bought specifically for tonight. My hands trembled slightly as I smoothed the fabric over my ribcage, over the place where I had always felt most vulnerable. At 27, I had learned to dress strategically, to choose cuts that flattered without emphasizing what I lacked. The sweetheart neckline of this dress had seemed perfect in the store, elegant and sophisticated for meeting Daniel's family for the first time. Daniel. My boyfriend of 8 months. The man who had pursued me relentlessly after we met at a marketing conference in Memphis, who had told me I was beautiful every single day since our first date, who had made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I had finally found someone who saw past the insecurities that had haunted me since puberty. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky where appearance was everything. My mother had been a beauty queen, my sister had inherited her curves and confidence, and I had inherited my father's athletic build and flat chest. Throughout high school, boys had looked past me to stare at girls with more obvious feminine attributes. In college, I had considered surgery, had even scheduled a consultation, but something had stopped me. Pride, maybe. Or stubbornness. I refused to let society dictate what my body should look like. Daniel had seemed different. He worked as an architect at a prestigious firm in Nashville, drove a Mercedes, wore expensive suits, and had a smile that could melt glaciers. When he looked at me, I felt seen. When he touched me, I felt desired. When he introduced me to his colleagues, I felt proud. Tonight was supposed to be the next step. His parents were hosting their annual summer dinner party at their estate in Belle Meade, one of Nashville's wealthiest neighborhoods. Daniel had warned me that his mother, Patricia, could be intimidating, that his father, Robert, was a federal judge who valued composure and intelligence, that his younger brother, Marcus, was a surgeon who thought he was God's gift to humanity. I had prepared. I had researched current events, practiced my firm handshake, chosen my outfit with military precision. I wanted them to see what Daniel saw in me, a successful marketing director with her own apartment, her own car, her own life. A woman worthy of their son. The drive to Belle Meade took 20 minutes. Daniel held my hand the entire way, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. He looked perfect in his navy blazer and crisp white shirt, his dark hairstyle just so, his cologne subtle and expensive. "Your parents are going to love you," he said as we pulled up to a sprawling colonial mansion with white columns and manicured lawns that seemed to stretch for miles. "What if they don't?" I asked, hating the vulnerability in my voice. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. "They will. Trust me." The house was even more impressive inside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than my annual salary. Patricia greeted us at the door, a tall woman in her 50s with Daniel's same dark hair and an elegant pearl necklace. She air-kissed both my cheeks and told me how lovely I looked, but her eyes scanned me with the precision of a jeweler appraising a stone. "Robert was in the library," she announced, "and Marcus just arrived with his girlfriend. Come, let me introduce you to everyone." The evening began smoothly enough. I shook hands with Robert, a distinguished man with silver hair and a commanding presence. I made small talk with Marcus's girlfriend, a petite blonde nurse named Ashley who seemed genuinely sweet. I complimented Patricia on her home, her garden, her exquisite taste. Dinner was served on the terrace overlooking a pool that reflected the golden sunset. There were 12 guests in total, a mix of family friends, colleagues, and relatives. I sat between Daniel and an older woman named Margaret who wanted to know everything about my career. I relaxed into the conversation, discussing social media strategies and brand development, feeling like I was finally holding my own in this world of wealth and sophistication. Daniel's hand rested on my knee under the table. Every few minutes, he would squeeze gently, a silent reassurance that I was doing well. I smiled at him, grateful for his presence, for his confidence in me. After the main course, Patricia stood to make a toast. She spoke about family, about tradition, about the importance of choosing the right partner in life. Her eyes landed on Daniel and me for just a moment, and I felt a flutter of hope in my chest. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe tonight would be the beginning of something beautiful. Maybe I had finally found where I belonged. I had no idea that in less than an hour, my entire world would shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The dessert course arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the terrace in soft amber light. Patricia had prepared an elaborate tiramisu, served in individual crystal glasses. The conversation flowed easily now, lubricated by expensive wine and the comfort of full stomachs. I was discussing a recent campaign I had managed when I noticed Daniel lean toward Marcus. They were sitting across from me, their heads close together in that way brothers do when they are sharing something private. I continued talking to Margaret about digital analytics, but part of my attention stayed on them. Marcus grinned at something Daniel said, then glanced in my direction before quickly looking away. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Daniel pulled out his phone, angling it so only Marcus could see the screen. He scrolled through something, and I watched Marcus's eyebrows rise. Then Daniel leaned even closer, his hand cupped around his mouth, whispering directly into his brother's ear. I stopped mid-sentence. Margaret was still talking, but her voice became background noise. Every instinct in my body focused on that whispered conversation happening 10 feet away from me. Marcus burst into laughter, the kind that erupts when you are trying desperately to stay quiet but cannot contain yourself. He clapped his hand over his mouth, his shoulders shaking. Ashley looked at him with confusion. Patricia paused her conversation with Robert's colleague and glanced over with mild disapproval at the disruption. But I could not look away from Daniel's face. My Daniel. The man who had told me I was beautiful. His expression was not malicious exactly, but there was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Amusement. Casual cruelty. The look of someone sharing a joke at someone else's expense. Marcus composed himself and whispered something back. Daniel shook his head, still grinning, and typed something on his phone. He showed Marcus the screen again. More suppressed laughter. My heart pounded against my ribcage. Against my flat, inadequate ribcage. I excused myself from Margaret and stood, my legs somehow steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. I walked around the table slowly, deliberately, my heels clicking on the stone terrace. Conversation continued around me. No one noticed the bomb about to detonate. I stopped directly behind Daniel and Marcus. Close enough to hear. Close enough to see the phone screen Daniel was still holding. It was a photo. Of me. From earlier tonight, standing by the pool talking to Ashley. The angle emphasized exactly what I had spent my entire life being self-conscious about. And then I heard it. Daniel's voice, low and confidential, meant only for his brother's ears, unaware that I was standing right there. He whispered, "She has no chest, so disappointing. I have been with her 8 months and it still bothers me every time I see her in a dress like tonight." The world stopped spinning. Everything I had built in my mind about us, about love, about being seen and valued, collapsed in those 11 words. Time fractured into crystalline shards. I could see every detail with painful clarity, the way Marcus's smile faltered as he sensed someone behind them, the exact moment Daniel's shoulders tensed as he realized I was there, the horrified expression spreading across his face as he turned and met my eyes. The phone was still in his hand. My photo still glowing on the screen. I did not cry. I did not scream. Something cold and sharp crystallized inside my chest, replacing the hurt with something far more dangerous, absolute clarity. I reached down and plucked the phone from Daniel's frozen fingers. He did not resist. Around us, conversation continued, oblivious. Patricia was laughing at something Robert had said. Margaret was asking Ashley about her nursing shifts. I held the phone up so everyone at the table could see the photo of me. My voice came out steady, clear, loud enough to cut through every conversation on that terrace. "I would like to share something with everyone," I announced. 12 faces turned toward me. Patricia's smile froze mid-laugh. Robert set down his wine glass. The terrace fell completely silent except for the soft bubbling of the pool filter. Daniel stood abruptly, his chair scraping against stone. His face had gone white. "Wait," he stammered. "Let me explain." I ignored him. I looked directly at Patricia, at Robert, at every person sitting at that table. "Your son just whispered to his brother, and I read from memory, each word precise and deliberate, she has no chest, so disappointing. I have been with her 8 months and it still bothers me every time I see her in a dress like tonight." The silence that followed was absolute. Patricia's hand went to her pearl necklace. Ashley's mouth fell open. Margaret looked between Daniel and me with dawning horror. Marcus stared at his plate like he wished he could disappear into it. "That is what your son thinks of me," I continued, my voice never wavering. "That is what the man who told me I was beautiful every single day actually believes. That is the man who brought me here to meet his family." Daniel reached for my arm. "Please, this is not what it sounds like." I was joking, it was just guy talk, I did not mean it. I stepped back from his touch like he was radioactive. "Guy talk," I repeated. "You took a photo of me without my knowledge, mocked my body to your brother, and called it guy talk." I set his phone down on the table with careful precision. Then I picked up my clutch purse and looked one final time at Daniel. 8 months of my life spent with a man who had been silently disappointed in my body the entire time. I turned to Patricia and Robert. "Thank you for your hospitality," I said with perfect politeness. "I am sorry to leave early, but I suddenly have no appetite. If you made it this far in the story and you are rooting for what comes next, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Because what happens when you walk away from humiliation is just the beginning of finding your power." I walked across that terrace in my emerald dress, my head high, my spine straight, and I did not look back once. I made it to my car before the shaking started. My hands trembled so violently I could barely get the key in the ignition. I sat in the circular driveway of that mansion, surrounded by Mercedes and BMWs and Range Rovers, and I let myself feel everything I had held back on that terrace. Rage. Humiliation. Betrayal. But underneath it all, something else was growing. Something fierce and unbreakable. My phone exploded with texts before I even pulled out of Belmead. "Daniel. 43 messages in 15 minutes. Apologies, explanations, desperate pleas." I blocked his number without reading past the first 3. Then Marcus. Then Patricia, somehow she had gotten my number. I blocked them all. I drove back to my apartment in Germantown, walked inside, and did something I had never done before. I called my boss, Jennifer, at 9:30 on a Saturday night. "I need the London position," I said when she answered. "The one you mentioned last month. Is it still available?" There was a pause. "The senior director role? That is a huge jump." "Are you sure?" I have never been more sure of anything in my life. 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to London with a 40% salary increase, a relocation package, and a new title. I did not tell Daniel I was leaving the country. I did not owe him that closure. London transformed me in ways Nashville never could. I threw myself into work with ferocious intensity. I led campaigns for luxury brands, traveled to Paris and Milan and Barcelona, built a team of brilliant creatives who respected me for my mind, not my measurements. I started running along the Thames every morning, not to change my body, but to feel strong in it. 6 months after leaving Tennessee, I was invited to speak at a global marketing summit in New York. The irony was not lost on me when I discovered the venue, a hotel in Manhattan, where Daniel's architecture firm was presenting their latest project in the same conference center, 1 floor below my keynote speech. I saw him in the hotel lobby the night before my presentation. He was standing near the bar with colleagues, laughing at something, looking exactly the same. Handsome. Successful. completely unaware of the woman watching him from across the marble expanse. But I was not the same woman who had walked out of his family dinner. I was wearing a tailored Alexander McQueen suit that cost more than the emerald dress ever did. My hair was shorter, sharper, more confident. I had a British team waiting for me upstairs to rehearse a presentation that would be delivered to 3,000 industry leaders the next morning. Daniel turned and saw me. The recognition that flooded his face was immediate, followed by something that looked like shock. He started walking toward me, weaving through the crowd, his expression desperate and urgent. I picked up my phone, made a deliberate show of checking the time, and walked directly to the elevators without breaking stride. Some people do not deserve even a glance backward. My keynote speech the next morning was the best professional moment of my life. 3,000 people filled that auditorium, and I spoke about authenticity in branding, about knowing your worth, about refusing to let others define your value. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. What I did not mention was that every word came from a very personal place. As I walked off stage, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Hotel lobby. Please. 5 minutes. That is all I ask. D. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to maintain the dignified silence I had crafted over the past 6 months. But another part, the part that had grown stronger in London, wanted something different. Not closure. Not reconciliation. But the opportunity to speak my truth to his face, on my terms, in my power. I met him in a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the conference crowds. He looked tired, older somehow, though only half a year had passed. His expensive suit could not hide the exhaustion in his eyes. That was incredible, he started, gesturing toward where my speech had been. You were always talented, but seeing you up there. He trailed off, shaking his head. I have been trying to reach you for months. I need you to know how sorry I am. What I said that night, it was the stupidest thing I have ever done. I was showing off for Marcus, trying to be funny, and I destroyed the best thing in my life. I let him finish. Then I spoke, my voice calm and clear. You did not destroy the best thing in your life, Daniel. You revealed who you actually are. And you gave me the gift of seeing it clearly. He flinched like I had struck him. I have spent 6 months in London, I continued, building a career I am proud of, working with people who value my intelligence and my creativity. I have dated men who find me attractive exactly as I am. I have learned that the problem was never my body. The problem was being with someone who made me feel like I needed to apologize for it. I was wrong, he said desperately. I know that now. I have been in therapy. I told my family what I did, how I hurt you. My mother has not spoken to me properly since that dinner. Marcus feels terrible. Everyone knows I ruined everything. I am glad you are in therapy, I said genuinely. I hope you learn to be a better person. But that growth is for your next relationship, not ours. We do not have an ours anymore. Can I at least take you to dinner? Try to make amends? I picked up my bag and stood. You already took enough of my time, Daniel. I have a flight back to London tonight and a life there that does not include you. I walked away from him for the second time, but this time it felt completely different. The first time had been survival. This time was choice. And choice, I had learned, was the most powerful thing of all. 2 years later, I stood in a contemporary art gallery in Shoreditch, London, surrounded by abstract paintings and the hum of cultured conversation. My team had just won Campaign magazine's International Agency of the Year, and tonight was the celebration. Champagne flowed freely. Colleagues congratulated each other. I wore a black slipdress with thin straps and a completely open back, something I never would have chosen in my Nashville days. My body had not changed. But everything else had. Excuse me, a voice said behind me, British accent, warm and slightly amused. I have been trying to work up the courage to approach you all evening, but you are quite intimidating when you are holding court with your team. I turned to find a man about my age, sandy hair, kind eyes, wearing a perfectly tailored suit with a slightly loosened tie. He held 2 champagne glasses and offered me one. I am already holding champagne, I pointed out, raising my half-full glass. Then I will drink both, he said without missing a beat, and look like an absolute fool. Worth it for the introduction. I am Oliver. I work in sustainable architecture. And you are the brilliant woman whose speech at the Creative Summit last month made me completely rethink how we present our projects to clients. We talked for 3 hours. About work, about London, about the strange paths that lead us to where we need to be. He was funny and self-deprecating and genuinely interested in everything I said. When he asked for my number, he did it nervously, like he genuinely feared rejection. On our 4th date, as we walked along the South Bank under string lights, he stopped and looked at me with an expression of wonder. "You are absolutely stunning," he said. "Like genuinely take my breath away beautiful." I hope you know that. I did know that. Finally. A year after meeting Oliver, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Heavy cardstock, elegant calligraphy, Nashville return address. Daniel was getting married to someone named Caroline, and inexplicably, I was invited. I did not go, obviously. But I did send a gift, a beautiful crystal vase from Harrods, with a note that said simply, "Wishing you both genuine happiness." Because I had learned that holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. I had built a life I loved, with work that fulfilled me, in a city that challenged me, alongside a man who thought I was perfect exactly as I was. Some nights, I still thought about that terrace in Belmead, about the worst moment of my life that became the catalyst for my best one. I thought about the woman in the emerald dress who walked away with her dignity intact, who chose herself when it mattered most. She would be proud of who I became. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever walked away from someone who did not see your worth, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what story you want to hear next. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us becomes the door to everything we were meant to be. Thank you for staying until the end. Your support means everything.